Today I am here to defend the indefensible, and yes, I will declare it right away. This play, which by the author's declaration should be considered canon, has divided the fandom for years. Between those who consider it canon and those who instead strongly deny it. For years I also ignored it. After reading it the first time I shrugged and said to myself, I'll pretend it doesn't exist, but then I reread it and started treating it like the main saga, trying to look beyond the first impression, and what came out of it is a story with certainly several forced aspects but which overall has a lot to offer. I already said it in a previous video that I'll leave in the description, but most of the problems of this story come from the writing, which is specifically designed for a play, which therefore has a different rhythm and must submit to different rules than those of a film or even more than a novel. The saga films themselves are no exception. For years we pretended not to see many problems. We made ourselves feel good about changes that overturned the canon of the books just because the films were all we had besides the paper saga. Today, however, having different media, we have become more careful, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, mind you, but it risks becoming a hypocritical attitude. So today I am here to try to debunk some of the most common accusations against the cursed child and try to give you a new key to reading. Let's start with one of the main problems: time travel. In the saga, time turners are a dangerous tool that brings with them many problems, by the author's own admission, who wrote in August 10, 2015. I went far too light-heartedly into the subject of time travel in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. While I do not regret it, Prisoner of Azkaban is one of my favorite books in the series. It opened up a vast number of problems for me, because after all, if wizards could go back and undo problems, where were my future plots? For this reason, in the 5th book he had all the time turners contained in the Ministry of Magic destroyed, to get rid of them. But I would like to remind you that the magical world is not limited to England, nor to the Ministry itself, so the fact that there are other time turners in the world is not so unrealistic. And here comes up one of the most common questions of fans: why have the characters of the saga never used the time turner to avoid catastrophes, deaths, or wars, before their destruction? And strange but true, the saga itself gives us a clear answer: because you can't. In the world of Harry Potter there are no universes or alternative timelines, or rather this is what is initially thought. There is only one fixed timeline. So all a time traveler can do is go into the past and make the past happen exactly as it happened. This partly eliminates the possibility of paradoxes. We see it clearly in The Prisoner of Azkaban. When Harry and Hermione go back, in reality they don't change anything, they simply make everything go as it has already gone, even if they don't know it yet. But here the problem arises with the cursed child, because in this new story we discover that Theodore Nott has created an evolved time turner, which allows you to go back as much as you want, without limitations except that you remain in the past for 5 minutes. Later we will learn that there is a second, even more powerful time turner, the Super Cy-Yang version, that allows you to stay in the past for as long as you want. And here everything gets complicated, because in this case the travelers, Scorpius and Albus Severus, interact with events changing them drastically, so much as to lead to alternative realities. With the classic flap of a butterfly's wings, a small change leads to the total distortion of the future, and this seems to contradict the canon, and yet the question has been raised previously. If there really was no danger since the timeline was self-preserving, then there would be no need for restrictive laws, but we know that the unspeakable Saul Croker spent his entire life studying time and discussed the question of paradoxes, which can therefore occur. Such was the case with Eloise Mintumble, who was trapped for a period of 5 days in the year 1402. We now know that her body had aged 5 centuries upon her return to the present, and, irreparably damaged, she died at St. Mungo's shortly afterwards. Furthermore, her 5 days in the distant past caused great upheaval in the life paths of everyone she met, changing the course of their lives so dramatically that no less than 25 of her descendants disappeared into the present, having been unborn. If there really was only one timeline, then this would not be possible, but Eloise actually brought about the alteration of the timeline even before the cursed child, using a classic time turner. In the play the two boys use the new evolved one, which therefore would potentially be more dangerous and instead causes the same damage as a classic one used improperly. The greater power is actually the possibility of putting things right by intervening multiple times, without aging in the meantime. So in reality this does not contradict the canon, but Nazi reaffirms it. The underlying problem is the very concept of the time turners, which in the saga are managed in a simplistic way but in the narrative reality have limitations precisely because they are potentially dangerous. In the canon, the timeline cannot really be just one that self-fulfills, otherwise Eloise would still be alive as well as the descendants of the people she met. We can perhaps assume that the timeline is self-preserved only within certain limits, beyond which it reaches irreparable conditions. And this could be acceptable for me, also because it would mean that in The Cursed Child, the new time turners do not actually change the canon but simply take the limit of irreparability of temporal changes one step forward. Ergo, no, they do not deny the canon. I understand that it may sound strange how the existence of the new time turner is introduced with Harry limiting himself to saying, "Magic has progressed since we were kids," which to me sounds a lot like, somehow Palpatine has returned. But this is in all respects, let's repeat, a hasty writing. See Bob, we don't have time to delve into this issue. Invent something that explains everything in one sentence. And poor Bob did it in this way. If it had been written in a book, I probably would have set it on fire, not Bob, poor boy, but in a play, where they want to make me believe that the actors lying on the ground are swimming. Honestly, I feel good about it. The fact that magic can evolve is actually not that absurd. I'll move on to explain. The spells we know were all created at a certain point. The instinctive magic that arises in magical children has no formulas and is the only truly natural one. Everything else is created. And we have clear examples of spells that are invented. Just look at what the Half-Blood Prince does. Before him, Muffliato or Levi Corpus did not exist. No one has ever explained to us how he created them or what the exact procedure is to structure a new spell, and yet no one has ever stood up and shouted indignantly. He just did it. For this time turner, the point is similar. Time turners already existed in the magical world, with all the problems that they brought with them. The fact that someone over time decided to break the law and create a more powerful one does not seem so unrealistic to me. Here we have the representation of a wizard who, having the possibility, built one with fewer limitations. Our Bob, who tired of having to be pulled by horses decided to invent strange contraptions called cars, is nodding at the back of the room. So Theodore Nott has evolved a magical technology that already existed. In my area, someone would say that it is too skillata, a technical and courtly term to indicate that it is too powerful, and I nod strongly to this. But the excessive power was in the very concept of the classic time turners. So this is not the real problem of the story. Nor is its use. Albus and Scorpius are literally kids who behave like kids. I thought I could improve things, intervene on the timeline and return to a better world without consequences. Because let's repeat it, they are kids. Harry believed that Minerva literally wanted to beat him up in the first book just because she heard him asking Quirrell to be able to speak to wood. Harry's genes ended up in Albus, and this is clear proof of that. However, I can agree that in choosing what to focus a new story on after the epilogue, dusting off one of the most problematic objects of the saga was not exactly a stroke of genius. But this is what it is, and we have to accept it for how it was written.